Turkey is a great transition here back to the NATO summit, because Erdogan had quite a showing at the NATO summit, cleared the way basically for Sweden to join NATO, had a very friendly relationship with Biden on display over the course of the NATO summit. And that has been the NATO summit over the last few days. I think it's obviously no coincidence that this conversation is transpiring at the same time, because there are new commitments. So this is Germany, France, Norway at the NATO summit announced new military aid to Ukraine. We can put the New York Times element up here. They promised tanks and longer range missiles. That's obviously a pretty big deal just from their point of view. NATO put out a statement saying that, quote, Ukraine's future is in NATO. And, this is just an attempt as a show of force to say, but without opening the way for Ukraine to be in NATO. As you see here on the screen, quote, conditions are met. When conditions are met, that's when Ukraine gets its membership. This is not good enough for Zelensky, but at the same time, NATO over the last few days has been making a very big deal to show solidarity and their alliance with Ukraine, stopping short of what Zelensky wants, which prompted him to kind of lash out.
Yeah, we can put his lashing out here. He posted on Twitter on the way to the thing, the next element here, and he says, he says basically we're still going to go to the NATO summit, but then he says, but Ukraine also deserves respect. He says, now on the way to Vilnius, we received signals that certain wording is being discussed without Ukraine. And I would like to emphasize that this wording is about the invitation to become NATO member, not about Ukraine's membership. It's unprecedented and absurd when time frame is not set, neither for the invitation nor for Ukraine's membership, while at the same time vague wording about conditions is added even for inviting Ukraine. It seems there is no readiness neither to invite Ukraine to NATO nor to make it a member of the alliance. This means that a window of opportunity is being left to bargain Ukraine's membership in NATO in negotiations with Russia. And for Russia, this means motivation to continue its terror. Uncertainty is weakness, and I will openly discuss this at the summit. So Zelensky livid that there are conditions being put on even an invitation into NATO. But the problem here is that if you're in an active war with Russia and you become a NATO member, instantly all of NATO is at war with Russia.
Right.
And Zelensky has to understand that.
Absolutely, he understands that. But again, this is one of the things, criticizing Zelensky, I think we criticize Zelensky rightfully here a lot. The man, whether or not we can criticize him from the Western perspective, is mired in war. And so from his perspective, it makes sense that you would push for Ukraine to have NATO membership, although I would argue it doesn't really make that much sense, because it's basically inviting even more death and destruction to Ukraine and to the entire region. And especially I think the amount of support that he's gotten, not just from NATO, but particularly from the United States. Let's roll this clip of actually Antony Blinken, who was on the Sunday shows, made his rounds on the Sunday shows this weekend, and had some comments about this too.
Well, it sends two messages. First of all, our alliance is stronger, it's bigger with two new members, Finland and now Sweden, and it's more united than ever. And in terms of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, it's sending a very strong message to Putin that he's not going to outlast us. He's not going to outlast Ukraine. And the sooner he ends this war of aggression, the better.
Okay, so I was wrong. That wasn't the Sunday shows. That was CBS this morning after the new members were admitted. Yeah, fake news. Sorry, I was thinking Biden was on Fareed Zakaria on Sunday, but Blinken there saying he's trying to do exactly that. He's trying to say, we're sending a strong message against Putin, but Zelensky's version of a strong message against Putin is Ukraine admission into NATO. Full stop.
And I have sympathy here for Zelensky in this sense that, and we reported on this recently on the show, that if you go back to the March 22 negotiations that were going on in Turkey between Russia, Ukraine, and being brokered by Erdogan, the basic outlines that we understand now were Russia would claim territory that it had had prior to February 21st. So that includes a little bit of Donbass and Crimea. And in exchange, Ukraine would be allowed to have security guarantees from the West that would kind of lock in that status quo. But the West said no. We're not giving you those security guarantees. And so without those, we want you to continue to fight and drain Russian power.
Right.
Because the Western powers, according to this reporting, liked the way that this was going for Russia, which was not as well as Russia had hoped. This 72 hours, Kyiv had not fallen, et cetera. And so this question of security guarantees, had it been answered in March 2022, may have ended the war at that point.
Yeah.
And so I can see why this much further into the war, after this much pain, misery, trauma, and bloodshed, that Zelensky would be throwing his hands up, like, what are we going to do here? Like,
Right.
when is this going to end? When are you going to get off the pot?
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's exactly the way to look at it, because, and again, that doesn't mean that Zelensky is completely correct on a strategic level to say X, Y, and Z is best for us, but it does mean that that sort of line that they're trying to toe would be frustrating from his perspective. And also, I think it's abundantly clear at this point. There were a lot of arguments made a year into the war, 6 months into the war, that Biden was, from a bipartisan perspective, he was doing all right. That is absurd to make that argument anymore. I think that becomes more clear every single day.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.